listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So afterward, things were a little bit hairier than perhaps they were supposed to be. Later that day, there was supposed to be the actual behind closed doors meeting. And then there was supposed to be a lunch. And then the East Room was all decorated for the signing of this mineral agreement, the economic stake that America would then use to leverage the end of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And that's not what happened. So Zelensky, again, starts suggesting that they were going to fight on till the end and that, they really didn't need anybody. And basically this I'm a strong woman, hear me roar kind of stuff. And then President Donald Trump, it is rumored, asked him to leave the White House. It's not clear whether Zelensky left on his own or whether President Trump asked him to leave. But Zelensky got in the car and drove away. And the entire afternoon festivities were canceled. Zelensky did stick around in D.C. for an interview with Fox News' Bret Baier. But beforehand, Trump spoke on the White House lawn about the fallout from that particular interview.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week. Soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians.
So Trump also on Truth Social made the statement that he didn't believe President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved, said President Trump, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. I want peace, said the president. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he's ready for peace. Again, the reason that the Trump administration, that Vice President J.D. Vance, that Donald Trump were so frustrated, and the American government as a whole, as we'll see a little bit later, are so aggravated with Zelensky, is to come into the United States Oval Office and then in front of the American media make demands of the President of the United States lacks a certain decorum, sure. But at the certain position that Ukraine is in, put the citizens of Ukraine at incredible risk. Because if the United States pulls out now, there may not be a Ukraine. The rest of the support of Europe is not enough to keep out the Russian military. And so Zelensky's ego was really on the line. So then he was set to be interviewed by Bret Baier over at Fox. And this was the moment that we were going to see. This is the question I had posed when I was in my coverage during the events today. If Zelensky walks this back, swallows his ego, and instead of barging in to the Oval Office like Greta Thunberg and going, "You have stolen our dreams," and demanding things of Trump, if he swallowed his ego and just accepted the mineral deal and said, hey, we all get hot-headed sometimes. I mean, the dude's Eastern European. I mean, every single argument with an Eastern European gets that loud. I'd love to hear what stereotypes I'm participating in on that one. But anyhow, the interview with Bret Baier did not go very well. Let's get right to it. Bret Baier and Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
In the Oval Office. Do you think you did, and do you think you owe an apology to President Trump?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation for this dialogue, and good evening to all your country, to all Americans. I'm very thankful to Americans for all your support. You did a lot. I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support. And I was always very thankful from all our people. You helped us a lot from the very beginning during 3 years of full-scale invasion. You helped us to survive. Anyway, we are strategic partners. And even in such tough dialogue, and I think we have to be very honest. And we have to be very direct to understand each other, because it's very, for us, very necessary to President Trump, and I'm with all respect that he wants to finish this war, but nobody wants to finish more than we, because we in Ukraine, we are in this war, we are in this battle, and battle for freedom, for our lives. So I'm just telling that I think that we have to be on the same side, and I hope that the president on our side together with us, and that is very important to stop Putin. And I heard from President Trump a lot of times that he will stop the war, and I hope he will, and we need to pressure him with Europe, with all the partners. And I think this dialogue had to be a little bit earlier to understand where we are.
So what Zelensky avoids the question, doesn't say whether or not he's going to apologize, and then he says, actually, it was really good that we had this big explosive moment in the Oval Office today, which shows that Zelensky has no understanding at all of Donald Trump, which is incredible, again, because left and right-leaning leaders around the world have a pretty good understanding of the type of brash individual that Trump is. And so when Zelensky chose to make it a spectacle, instead of going through the agreement, that is on him. That is on him. Whether or not you or I particularly like that, that is, in fact, what happened. And we'll catch some of these clips in just a second. By the way, this is not just those on the populist right of the United States saying this. Even CNN's Jake Tapper and many on the left are now coming around to the conclusion it was Zelensky who completely botched this today. Jake Tapper, from the notably not on the right CNN, quoted today, one pro-Ukraine expert normally supportive of Zelensky offered me this perspective. This is what he said. Ukraine is losing the war, the expert says. Russia is making tens of thousands of drones per month. Ukraine cannot shoot them all down. Russia is making advances because Russia doesn't value human life and is okay to lose thousands of men a day. That is correct, objectively. Ukraine cannot keep up with that and should not. There needs to be an end to this war, and there are only 3 ways out. This is the realism part that no one seems to want to grapple with. Everyone wants to picture this like amazing patriot moment where like they run out and the ghost of Kyiv is flying over, shooting all of the Russian planes down, and Ukraine takes all of the territory back, and it's wonderful and beautiful and everything's fine, and Putin is arrested by the international court, and yay, it's amazing. That's not going to happen. That's not in the real life that you're dealing with. So number 1, America can send military weapons and manpower, and potentially this starts World War III. Correct. Number 2, Ukraine can surrender and give in to Putin. Or 3, we give this ceasefire plan and deal that Trump is pushing a chance. I would go for option 3. Trump was talking about Ukraine getting land back that it has lost just yesterday. Zelensky knew the position of the Trump administration ahead of time. Perhaps this meeting was a trap, but it's one Zelensky could have avoided. So let's talk about that idea of a trap. Again, that's posted by an expert that is a contributor to Jake Tapper and CNN. From the establishment right, there's a lot of pearl clutching from the NRO that Trump is playing to Putin's tune. And this is always the criticism of those on the establishment right and those on the left whenever you say anything about the realism of the situation in Ukraine. That if you say, look, Zelensky doesn't really need, as a leader of a country, to be running around demanding things of people. That's not how you do it. If you point that out, and this crew immediately runs to you and starts shouting, well, you just like Putin. You just like Russia. You're just a dictator simp for Putin. Okay. Fantastic. First of all, that's a false binary. Number 2, that's not how grown-ups view the world. And number 3, that's not convincing Americans to support the fight of Ukraine against Russia. It makes you look like toddlers. So on the other side of the establishment right, individuals like Mark Thiessen, who is a very huge supporter of Ukraine, he is with AEI, Fox News, and has written for the Washington Post, said, the entire events of today are entirely Zelensky's fault. Trump greeted him graciously and was ready to turn the page. Just as he said he wanted to get Ukraine's help get its territory back, but Zelensky comes in and gets into a fight in public. Never seen anything like it in my life. Zelensky did in fact pick a fight with Trump. And whether or not you like Zelensky or you dislike Trump, that doesn't change the objective facts of what happened today. There's this silly concept that I've seen pasted all over the internet that, it was an ambush, that Trump and J.D. Vance, they were waiting there for him. They were going to get him. They're going to get 40 minutes of very pro-Ukrainian dialogue in which Trump offered extra stuff to Ukraine, like trying very hard to broker that Ukraine gets as much of its land back as possible, including the land that has a lot of the minerals that the United States wants in that deal, which are in the Donbass and Crimea. And Zelensky goes, no, I'm not going to compromise with Putin. Well, then what are we supposed to do here? You're out here telling the media and telling Putin that you're not going to compromise, you're going to fight on to the bitter end. So then are the United States just in that forever because the president of Zelensky says, my people are going to keep fighting? Why is the American public, the Western European public, now signing on for this war for eternity? Because you won't negotiate. Does that mean I like the outset and the outset of the negotiations? Absolutely not. But that is a realistic question that everyone has to confront. And if you don't like it, tough. There's all kinds of wars that are extremely difficult to get out of. You are choosing between the lesser of two evils. That's how the adult word functions. We'll see the radio crew in a second. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. The rest of the interview with Bret Baier was not a whole lot better. Zelensky is doubling down, not backing down at all. And by the way, there are now members of the Ukrainian parliament which are calling for Zelensky to be impeached. Again, we'll get to that in just a second. But here's Zelensky doubling down and saying, I'm not going to do anything until we get military security guarantees.
Just with our people that America stay with us, that's great. We count on it. But just to share it and to say it, that's all.
How does the war end? How do you get to a deal? You're at a place right now where there is no deal. How do you get it back on track?
I think that Europe is ready for contingents and to help us with financing of big armies, such big as we have now. This is our army, the part of security guarantees. Now we want to find the place for our biggest strategic partner, for the United States, or United States will propose where and how the United States will give us security guarantees, what kind of and what part of volume of security guarantees.
So what he wants specifically, and he goes on to say that he will not negotiate at all unless there are security guarantees. He wants European and American boots on the ground and military personnel from NATO in the Ukraine, or he wants an Article 5 style situation, in which case if Ukraine is ever attacked, then the Western powers come in and fight on behalf of Ukraine. And the case that Trump is making is, we're not even going to talk about any of that until I can show the American people how they have a vested economic interest in this region. Just saying that you don't want Putin in Kiev is not enough. It's not enough. You have to provide something to the rest of the world. Now, as someone with libertarian sympathies, I absolutely understand the idea of defending your nation from an external threat invading sovereign territory. Absolutely. That is your moral right to fight. That is not my moral obligation to fight for you. There's this silly idea that just because the United States is big, that makes the rest of the world our problem and every conflict in it. That's not the case. It's not the case. Do I want Putin controlling Kiev? No. Should the United States provide enough support so that doesn't happen? To an honorable end, yes. But does the United States, is the red line that we're going to do anything at all to stop Putin from doing anything ever? Because that gives Putin an extreme amount of leverage. And we're all the way back to nuke versus nuke Cold War style tactics, which is not where the world wants to return to. Now, Zelensky did end by saying that the relationship could, of course, be, salvaged. Oh, this is fantastic. Oh, it's amazing. No. No, the idea that the Zelensky is just going to get off scot-free from this because this is how he's been operating the entire 3 years. Trump is now, and I mean this in real time, he is now in the process of saying, and I'm paraphrasing this because I don't have the clip here, I don't have the quote here exactly, that the United States, if Zelensky's not going to play, if he's not actually going to show up to the table, because again, the United States is the only power that can broker peace here. I will repeat that. The United States is the only government, it is the only power that can broker peace between Russia and any other country, period. We think Sweden's going to do it? Poland? All of Europe together could not broker peace between Russia and Ukraine can't do it, so it has to be us. So Trump says, well, then you're going to have to give something to the United States. because this is going to damage international relations. This is costing the United States political, economic, and military capital to do this. More than it's already cost the Americans. So, what are you going to propose? And Trump says, look, if you're not willing to play that game, fine. Maybe we just, this is Trump's negotiation style, maybe we'll just take our hands off. We'll see what happens then, big man. Fine. You will tell the whole world that you're alone? Fine. Show us what you're all about then. And all of the European leaders and the other leaders saying, we stand with Ukraine. Fine. You send boots then. Go ahead. You send troops. You send your big socialized healthcare budget to Ukraine then if you're so smart. If you truly believe that the time is to grandstand and show everyone how beautiful and amazing you are, then go ahead. And that's what Trump is currently doing. So over from producer Daniel, I'm going to see some of the things that Trump has ordered here. The Trump administration is in the process of terminating funding for supporting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. This is according to a source with the Washington Post. The Trump administration currently has no more plans to announce more assistance to Ukraine, but aid is still flowing. We're going to catch the radio crew here. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, crew. The radio folks will join us in just a second. Sorry for some of the abrupt pauses and things this evening. Trying to keep the radio crew in with the FCC regulations is a bit of a struggle here, there, and everywhere. Now, I know that the mail time jingle did, in fact, just play, but we're going to go ahead and bring the radio crew in and just try to roll out the rest of the quick news. Again, I know it's an unorthodox show this evening, but it's crucial that we get this entire conversation framed out because the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict, foreign policy in the United States changed today. It changed. It is completely different. And because it's completely different, we need to take a look at how things are moving, where things are going. So the online reaction to things, as you might possibly expect, is something truly, truly special. Now, while the ambush line is still making its rounds, there are individuals who are very on the left, very pro-Ukraine, again, just in that situation, where they've pointed out since the coverage of the Ukraine event today, since the coverage of the Ukraine American, the Trump and Zelensky press conference today, the beginning of that, there have, after the whole narrative about the ambush, now you get to a position where basically the entire world is starting to go, wait a minute, there was 40 minutes of calm conversation. What is Zelensky doing? One individual, Richard Hanania, he's the president of the Center for the Study of Partnership and Ideology, an individual over from the Columbia SIPA. He points out that after watching the entire thing again, and again, these are major individuals in kind of the center and on the left here, foreign policy experts, you might say. After watching the entire thing twice, Zelensky, they say, was minutes away from being home free, would have had the deal, would have had new commitments, he would have been right there, ready to go, getting the peace negotiations started. Probably Trump would have pushed to have him invited to the table. And what happened instead? Zelensky poked at J.D. Vance, said, well, you haven't even been to Ukraine. How dare you say how the war is going on our end? And it all fell to crap. Now what were you seeing from the government and other individuals? Well, you're seeing people like Senator Lindsey Graham, who's normally quite the war hawk, now suggesting that, well, I think that Volodymyr Zelensky needs to either step down or be replaced with someone different before we can proceed with these negotiations. For Lindsey Graham, that's quite a statement. Dan Crenshaw, also a kind of an guy on the right that functions as more establishment from time to time, is also sided with the president. The Democrats are saying the same kind of thing that you would expect them. They're trying to have a field day with this. It is not going to work in the way that they expect. So Congressman Jasmine Crockett, our favorite congressional crackhead who spends more time ranting about white people than doing her job. I'm just kidding. She never does her job. She said Trump and Vance were an embarrassment and a disgrace. She typed them in all caps, so you know she's serious. It is absolutely shameful to watch them berate the president of another country, let alone one of our allies. You're going to hear this time and time and time again. How could he talk this way to one of our allies? You don't hear any of those in the Democrat House or the Senate saying, hey, how did one of our allies treat the president of the United States in his own Oval Office? You're not hearing any of that, are you? What you're hearing is that, oh, Donald Trump didn't let Zelensky make a lot of demands in the Oval Office today, and J.D. Vance didn't sit there quietly while, after asking a question, hey, are you having trouble conscripting troops? Since you want to, air everything out, let me ask a diplomatic question that would have been behind closed doors, now in front of everybody. Are you having trouble conscripting troops? You struggling? And then Zelensky loses it. And then the sound of yelling, angry, like chimpanzees yelling at each other in front of the fireplace starts going off. And it becomes an absolute mess. So we will stick around for some bonus tonus this evening because we're going to see the rest of this through. And we might even get around to the last little bit of news regarding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Epstein files and all that mess. So to the radio crew, head over to the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal, or over on X. We'll see you real soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. I didn't even get to make my announcement to the radio crew. That's a real shame. We'll have to hit that later. This is a little more important. Other representatives have said similar nonsensical things. Representative Eric Swalwell, most known for being seduced by a Chinese spy, said absolute admiration for President Zelensky. This guy has balls. He went into the Oval Office and stood up to Russia's best negotiators. Keep trying this. Keep trying this. The idea that if you ever try to negotiate anything, if you ever question what leverage Ukraine has, if you're not willing to just completely, unrestrictedly throw America into eternal support for this war, which, by the way, does result in a lot of Ukrainian dead, it's completely unnecessary, that actually makes it more difficult for future security guarantees of Ukraine and other Eastern European countries. Oh, he's just negotiating on behalf of Putin. I will remind you for the 18th time that the President of the United States is currently in the process of organizing sanctions as well as tariffs on the Russian fuel economy that not only provides a lot of money to natural gas exporters from the United States, but keeps Europe, who is currently buying oil and natural gas from Russia, who they hate so much, it provides Europe an off-ramp to buy from the US instead of with Russia, which very, very severely harms the Russian economy. That's Trump. That's not something Biden was willing to do, by the way, boys and girls. He was cutting the United States exports in oil and natural gas. But lest we get called away, again, we have Cory Booker, who is really getting back to his roots of just crying in front of the public. So it's really good to see him getting out the tear works again. He goes, "We are Americans. We are the most powerful nation on the planet. What defines us is not our power to dominate the weak. What demonstrates our character is not the capacity to traumatize the afflicted. What speaks our truth is not how we taunt, deride, or belittle the embattled, broken, or battered. We are the country of the Marshall Plan, the nation of the Berlin airlift, the nation whose leader said, 'Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.'" Okay. The United States, in exchange for the huge amount of money given to Europe amidst the Marshall Plan, in exchange for the massive amount of resources given to the Eastern German people living in Berlin, the western half of Berlin under the liberation of the Western forces through the Berlin airlift, those were given in exchange for United States, American hegemony on the world stage. That it was because of the Marshall Plan that when England and France decided to play it solo and go screw around with Egypt during the Suez Canal crisis, royally screwing it up, Eisenhower reminded them that we could cut off aid at any moment. Is that hurting the weak, France and England, who are recovering from the Second World War? Or when Austria decided to play it loosey-goosey and maybe consider giving communists a greater portion of their government during the Cold War? Remember when we threatened to cut off the Marshall Plan then? The United States, the entire reason that USAID was set up was so that the President of the United States would be able to play hardball with other countries on foreign policy. Playing hardball is not just throwing a middle finger to Ukraine no matter what the situation, or throwing a middle finger to Putin or Ukraine no matter what the situation is. That's not playing. To play the game of diplomacy, you must engage in compromise, in bribery, in leveraging economic, social, military maneuvers. And if you refrain from doing this because you're too good, or the ideal of America in one's heart is too important, like you have Cory Booker whining about here, is not how the real world works. Tammy Duckworth in the same way, attacking our Democratic partner in service of an autocratic dictator. There are so many people today who are suggesting that Donald Trump not letting Zelensky berate him in the Oval Office was a gift to Vladimir Putin. A gift to Vladimir Putin would have been the Biden-esque manner of being lectured by other countries, or like Barack Obama, and then apologizing for the United States on the world stage. Oh, now Putin has all of this leverage. Putin does have additional leverage after today. Absolutely he does. And that's not because of Donald Trump. The United States is the only entity that can broker peace between the United States and Ukraine. Pretend otherwise is absolutely ridiculous. Bernie Sanders, Trump berates Zelensky, the leader of a democratic country, courageously fighting Russian imperialism, while he allies himself with Putin, a dictator who started the bloodiest European war in 80 years. By the way, I really do enjoy Bernie Sanders criticizing Trump over Zelensky, given that when it comes to taking money from corrupt governments, Bernie Sanders has been in favor of serving autocratic dictatorships through United States foreign policy his entire career in government. I'm not going to be taking foreign policy advice from the man who honeymooned in Moscow. Governor Josh Shapiro was also really grumpy. He decided to say this was actually about supporting the 150,000 Ukrainian American people in Ukraine. Again, which one of the barbs that Vice President J.D. Vance threw during the meeting was that Zelensky came to the United States and toured munitions factories in Pennsylvania on the campaign trail with Governor Josh Shapiro. Again, Zelensky knows all of this about Trump, or should. The rest of the world knows this about Trump. That he is very direct, he's very forthcoming, and he cares a whole lot about how things are conducted in public. And if Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron can come forward and make it extremely clear what it is that they want, but still playing nice with the president in front of the American public, if they can't figure that out, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. If that is not something that one can wrap their mind around. Now, where are things going from here? Because unfortunately, things are starting to pick up. I'm not going to tell you about all of the various individuals who are coming out in their governments and saying, we stand with Ukraine. And I know Iceland is a major foreign policy player. I will point out that the Daily Signal did report this evening, according to Bradley Devlin, that the White House found this completely unexpected today. That the deal was set. The rest of the world was ready. Again, Volodymyr Zelensky came ready to sign today. The Ukrainian parliament was very taken aback by this today. That it was expected Ukraine was going to come in, was going to sign the deal, and that peace negotiations, there are rumors that there were meetings being set up in the offing with Russia and Ukraine in the same place. The delegations were being prepared. We were going to go right into the peace negotiations. And then Zelensky sideballed the entire world today by demanding a bunch of stuff in the Oval Office in front of the media, not during negotiations, but by moving private negotiations into the public. So as far as letting the Ukrainian people down today, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is at the very top of the list. He can pretend that he's really fighting for Ukraine. Screwing over the largest ally you have, who is the only entity that can broker the end of the war, is not a great diplomatic move. So those things all said, we'll get into just a little bit of mail time here, and a little bit of final news before we close off for the weekend. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the former bartender turned Democratic representative from New York, has now formally inquired through a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi whether or not she's under investigation because she has given a lot of advice over the last couple of months to illegal immigrants on how to avoid immigration customs enforcement. Now, advising someone how to break the law, encouraging someone to break the law, that's a federal crime. I can't say, hey, you know what you should do? You should violate federal law. That's not allowed. And then explaining to them how to do it is aiding the crime. Now, it's really funny to see someone writing a letter saying, am I officially under investigation or just kinda, sorta? This letter is dated yesterday. She writes, I write to request clarity on whether the DOJ has yielded to political pressure and attempts to weaponize the agency against elected officials whose speech they disagree with. Yielding to political pressure and attempts to weaponize the agency. I fail to see how it is not the weaponization of your platform as a representative of the House of Representatives in the United States Congress to tell people how to evade U.S. federal law. That is the definition of the weaponization of one's position. And by the way, falling to political pressure because it is the very far left voters of this country who are pressuring Democrats into defying the federal law of this country that not only has President Trump gone all in on, but also I will remind you that Bill Clinton, that Hillary Clinton, that Barack Obama explicitly called for individuals who are avoiding federal immigration law to be deported immediately. It's not brand new U.S. policy. In other news, and this one is a particular good hoot, I must say. The FBI missed a deadline in which it was to deliver a series of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein to Attorney General Pam Bondi today. Now, Pam Bondi has made the case in a letter to Kash Patel that the FBI actually didn't get all the documents in. She orders Kash Patel to investigate it. Kash Patel has been pseudo-silent on this as he's investigating. He's trying to figure out what's going on in the Southern District of New York, and there are all of these ins and outs and who said, what said, he said, he said, she said kind of stuff. Those things all said, we haven't seen the end of this play out yet. I do believe that the Attorney General of the United States is doing her best to release this to the American people, despite the kind of botched despite the botched optics of the binder release through influencers. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that over the weekend. That all said, we'll hit one mail time question really quick, and then we'll get you guys checked out of here for the weekend. So if we can actually get a little bit of mail time up. And please do excuse those who are tuning in for the first time. Those who listen to the show frequently send in a couple of questions. This one is extremely prescient to the current situation. It was sent in before the negotiations today. Do you think that the war between Russia and Ukraine will end during Trump's administration? And do you think Zelensky will honor his promise of stepping down? That's from Mike. Do I think that Zelensky will honor his promise of stepping down as though that is after the war happens? No, I don't. I think that Zelensky might step down after extreme pressure from the Ukrainian parliament. You are seeing what could be a growing number of Ukrainian parliamentarians to shut down the current approach that Zelensky is using on the world stage. It's not producing dividends. Ukraine is going to need help rebuilding after the war is over as it is. And this is quite a situation of biting the hand that feeds you. So I think that Zelensky might end up stepping down. I don't think he's going to be impeached. I find that hard to believe. It didn't really work during the brief window that was attempted via the Biden administration in Israel. I do think that he might step down in disgrace. That might be a thing that happens. Again, that's all conjecture. It's just me answering the question in whole. Do I think that the war will be over during the Trump administration? Yes, absolutely. I do think so. I think it will likely be over in a couple of months, if not a ceasefire within the month, because the Trump administration is now using max leverage tactics to get what it wants. And again, considering that America is the global hegemon, it is the ultimate power in the world. When you throw around all of the weight at once, things tend to happen. So that said, a little announcement just for the end of the show. I am taking over the Daily Signal's Top News in 10, which is a morning 10-minute kind of quick bulletin of the headlines news program for the Daily Signal. You can find that stuff over on the Daily Signal's YouTube page, on podcasts, wherever you get that kind of stuff. Really looking forward to carrying on the work that Rob Bluey, that Virginia Allen, that our White House correspondent Elizabeth Mitchell have brought over the last couple of years. Very excited to kickstart that process. That'll start Monday morning. We'll still be doing the show here. This is one of the surprises I'd referenced just a little bit ago in terms of episodes. Some big changes that are coming. A couple more we can't get into just yet, but we're very excited about the show's growth. There are a lot of things we're excited to share with you as things start to pick up speed. Those who are tuning in tonight, we ask, hey, give us a like on the video, subscribe if that's something that you enjoyed tonight. I try not to bludgeon people over the head with like and subscribe, but, it would be rather helpful if instead of seeing NPR's Monday Morning Droll, you got this. Those things all said, have a wonderful weekend. I hope that you find some time to spend with your families. That's really what I'm looking forward to. Pray for those that are involved in the negotiations with Russia and Ukraine. If anything else, just that God's will be done in this situation and that the war would end. And above all, I genuinely hope you find a little bit of time to rest from this insane news cycle. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC out of Indianapolis. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care.